From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
And we've returned. Let's think of Folklore kind of like a mashup album, or a mashup video on YouTube. You see things that feel unlikely coming together and making a surprisingly cohesive whole. As we talked about in our earlier episode on Forgotten Religions, Folklore functions like religious syncretism. And so we can kind of trace, or we can at least speculate on the evolution of Duende in Central South America, in Mexico, and in the Philippines as well, because people are all intelligent. People are all trying to explain what's going on in the world, and they come up with stories that have a lot in common, or beliefs that have a lot in common. Therefore, it's highly likely that native people heard of the word Duende for the first time, and they already had something similar in their own culture. Turns out, across history, people love the idea of magic little human-like things, whether they are good or evil or both at different times. So, we can imagine that, right? That sounds plausible.
Oh yeah, and I think it fully explains our love of action figures and tiny dolls.
Big dolls are spooky, though. We can agree on that.
Oh yeah, but I mean, if you got a little thing that you can play with, that's fun. That's exciting. And if that thing was actually real and animated and could move and had ideas and motivations, shoot, that's the greatest thing ever.
Stay away from our feet, though.
Yeah.
So I like the feet thing. It's just so weird and specific. So credit to whomever came up with that when they were trying to scare their kid into sleeping. Anyhow, back to our example. So let's say, Matt, you have become part of the Spanish Empire. You're reaching this land you've never seen before for the first time. You're learning a little bit of the local language. They're learning a bit of your language, Spanish. You talk to them about the idea of Duende, and then they go, by the way, we're bracketing all the horrible things that the Spanish Empire did. Mm-hmm. They did a ton of horrific stuff. They committed a lot of atrocities. But in this scenario, Matt, you're just a regular guy. You're just working your job. You're chilling with these other people. You say Duende, and then they say, oh, you mean that forest spirit. Yeah. We got those here.
Oh, really? That's amazing. Oh, we shall have to set up traps everywhere.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, what's your Duende like?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, our Duende lives in the forest, has a weird thing about toes, and will sometimes help you if you are lost in the woods. And then, our Spanish speaker in this scenario, Jonathan Strickland has ruined my pronunciation of that word. Our Spanish speaker there also says, well, where I grew up, and at this point in time, they'd probably say a specific town or region in Spain, and say where I grew up.
Duendes eat babies.
Yeah, this is what they do here. So you guys got off kind of easy. And so with this in mind, it's also pretty likely that indigenous cultures would have used these terms interchangeably, Duende and then the other terms that they already had, because they already had things like this in their culture. So a common belief in something like hidden forest spirits or forest guardians or similar examples would have over time become closer and closer to something like the Spanish concept of Duende, and also retain the attributes of the creature in the pre-existing belief system. So there we go. But this is not going to be a lecture on folklore. Don't worry. Just had to get that part out of the way, because Duendes are different for a very big reason. A very, very big reason.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I wonder how many people are out there listening and thinking, wow, these guys are taking Duendes pretty seriously. It's what is it, 2021 right now? They know that they're not real, right? You're probably
Right?
thinking that, some of you.
Do they also think minotaurs are just running around Greece, and that's like a pestilence of minotaurs, whatever the group name for minotaurs is, a stampede of minotaurs?
Oh yeah, for sure. And the Pegasi that just exist in the cliffs.
There's some guy in Athens right now going like, please, someone help me get rid of these gorgons. It's like a made for TV commercial.
Yeah.
You know,
we can't let them get into the Georgia theater again. Oh, you're talking about the original Athens. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. Well, either. You know what? Either will work for this commercial, Matt. We just need to have one person like turn to stone and then someone break the fourth wall and talk to the camera and be like, there's gotta be a better way.
Yeah.
Cue Billy Mays in a toga.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we've solved that. But yeah, you're right. It's a good question, though. It is 2021.
Yes, but the one major difference here is what Pedro has mentioned in the email that he sent to us. Unlike all these other creatures, human beings in real life in the modern era with digital technology believe they have encountered these creatures and captured them and have evidence of it and have uploaded it to social media sites like YouTube. And a lot of other people believe that some of these videos are real.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's no shortage of people who not only believe that there is an actual creature as a duende, but they also believe they have seen it or someone they know has seen it. So what if instead of being a legend, the duende is an actual creature, a cryptid? Here's where it gets crazy. So duende sightings generally follow the same format, or a lot of them do. There's a small group of kids hanging out somewhere. They might be playing soccer. They might just be kicking it on the sidewalk. It's often going to occur at night. And then one of them sees something moving in the shadows, usually partially obscured.
Or fully obscured.
Yeah. And then boom, enter the duende who pops out, right?
For just a second or
just
2 seconds maybe?
Mm-hmm. Or maybe is walking away. But either way, the sighting is brief and the duende usually leaves the scene immediately.
And then the camera shuts off right afterwards, and that's all you get. And there's no follow-up. That's it.
Yeah, and thanks to the use of recording technology and thanks to the democratization of mobile video, you can see dozens of alleged duende sightings caught on film. Probably the most famous, the one that got the most attention outside of Mexico, Central and South America, was this thing called the Argentina gnome. And you and I both watched this video.
Oh yeah, I watched it so many times on YouTube. You know this already, I'm sure, everyone listening, but you can reduce the timing of these videos down to like 1/2 of the regular speed, all the way down to 1/4 of the regular speed. And you can watch like half frame by half frame, record, however, whatever the frame rate was that was uploaded from these terrible cameras people are using to record these things. And you can watch it. And I did, and I have over and over and over. And the sidestepping Argentina gnome, or shuffling, I guess. I mean, I wouldn't categorize it as one of my favorites, but it's definitely there. It's one of the best isolated creature versions of these sightings, where you can actually see something, even though it's fully in shadow. You can see that there's a full thing for longer than a second.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to say it. It's very short. It's 48 seconds. In matters like this, folks, I typically defer to Matt's video expertise. Matt, you have a depth of experience with this, and you know how to spot things that would call the veracity of a piece of video into question. So that's that's one of my first things in my process is I'll send Matt a video and I'll be like, all right, before I get weird with this, is this real? And this is tough because it's easier and easier to fake these as well. Anyway,
well, I would say that one
mm,
is real in that there was actually something in that video. You just have to decide, was it a little person that group of people knew? Was it a kid dressed up in some costume? Or was it an actual creature of some sort? But
here's the thing. The hat.
Yeah.
The hat is one of the big sticking points. We're a family show, so I'm not going to go into all my feelings about the hat aspect of these sightings. But for a lot of people who are unfamiliar with this, imagine a sinister version of the stereotypical gnome with the red pointy hat, little guy, white beard, like the evil universe version of that. That's something that people often describe seeing. And it's important to note, in the era of TikTok hoaxes and all this stuff, it's important to note that not all the people reporting these sightings are children or teens. There are a lot of fringe researchers who seem convinced that this is a real thing. One in particular, the late cryptozoologist Ivan Sanderson, himself a very controversial figure, noted that Duende sightings have been reported by tons of folks in Central America, including people you would consider highly educated in the field, like the zoologist and author Alan Rabinowitz, who wrote about the Belizean beliefs in the Duende and his own experience, citing what he described as a strange little man about 3 feet tall standing at the very edge of the forest at night.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I'm interested in that. I didn't read that particular thing from Alan Rabinowitz, Ben, but that's something that I'm now going to look deeper into. Just, even though it's one person's account, the fact that it's a zoologist who, felt it was compelling enough to write down interests me. But
or that it written down as relayed to Sanderson. So
got it.
There
Okay.
may have been some
Telephoning.
Yeah, maybe a little. We can't rule that out, but we know that this guy Rabinowitz is not alone. There are so many sightings, enough for us to broadly categorize 2 different types of description. And these descriptions are going to be important. We'll return to them later in the show.
Yes. One of them is a rather hirsute human person, a man-like creature that's about 4 feet tall. There's a shriveled nature to this character that's often described.
Rode hard, put away wet,
There you go. There are a couple things that this person may wield. Often it's a stick of some kind, sometimes an instrument, like a stringed instrument, such as a guitar, sometimes a weapon, like a machete or a knife, or, what may look like a sword in this person's hand. And they're often in some kind of like animal skin, like a hide, something like that, rags. And almost always in this one category of sighting, there is something on the head. There's a hat of some sort, whether that's, related to the animal hide that they were wearing or just a pointy little thing, some kind of headwear.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very, very important fact you mentioned. It's not always a pointy hat. It's not always a David the Gnome impersonator, right? Mm-hmm. But the other explanation has some important differences. In the other description, you'll see generally a 3 to 4 foot tall creature, a human-esque looking thing with sloping shoulders, noticeably long arms, brown hair, a flat yellowish face, and then long hair down the back and the neck. So we're at an impasse. The creature's characteristics, as it's described, and the stories about it are clearly a blend of different cultures connecting. right? European native cultures, and then probably also lore from the continent of Africa. But again, depending on who you ask, there have been sightings of Duende by credible witnesses. At the very least, we know that forest park rangers and zoologists have seen things in the wild that they cannot explain to their own satisfaction, despite their higher than average odds of being familiar with most of the animals in the area. You know what I mean? It's way different from just dropping a rando in there and then saying, okay, describe these things.
Yeah, for sure. But no matter how credible those witnesses are, generally these sightings occur in the dark or in the shadows, just as they do on all the YouTube videos you're going to find when you're searching for this later tonight. I promise you it's going to happen. It just happens to all of us. You have to keep looking, because some of them are compelling as hell. So it's difficult to know when you're looking at a shadow and you're seeing something moving and you're in nature out in the wilderness. Like, what is that thing? What was that? Why does it smell different in here right now? That's another thing, by the way, we didn't even mention. According to some stories, when they're duende, especially the ones that live in a house, when they've come by, there's an acrid, awful smell that may be associated with them being around. Similar to how many Jinn encounters are described, where there's like a sulfuric smell that a residue of sorts that is left behind. Anyway, we have to you take all of this into account. Like, could it be just that people's minds are playing tricks on them in the dark? Even the people who know what they're doing and know where they are in their surroundings? Or is there some other explanation? And we're going to look at that after another word from our sponsors.
Check your toes. Everybody keep an eye on them.